All right, and welcome back for another weekly video. Today we're diving deeper into emotions and talking all about temperament. In the upcoming week, you have another blog, a quiz, and an advice column due. Just looking ahead, November 4th, your big paper is due, so I hope you've begun on that. I'll post a video in a couple days just about a little more in-depth around it, but if you have any questions, please reach out. So today we're talking all about temperament. And what is temperament? Well, it's really our way that we respond to the environment. It's how we regulate our reactions and our emotions. It's extremely variable across individuals, and it's really the foundation of our personality development. There's a couple different dimensions that we'll talk about today: fearful distress, irritability to distress, positive affect, activity level, attention span, and rhythmicity. And so, with all of those, like fearful distress is, do you withdraw from new situations? Irritability is your frustration and your anger. Positive affect is your smiling and how social you are. Your activity level is just your gross motor activities. Your attention span is, can you focus? And your rhythmicity is really the predictability of your bodily functions. Thomas and Chess, you might remember, talked about three really broad ways to classify temperament. They said you could have easy temperament. About 40% of children have that. They're easy, they're positive, they're outgoing, they're open to new experiences. About 15% of children have this slow to warm up temperament. And that's like a little bit moody, a little slow to react and adapt, and mild reactions. And then finally, about 10% are difficult children. They are irritable, they have irregular habits, they have really intense reactions. As you think about yourself, what kind of baby were you? What kind of child were you? And how did that turn out to you as an adult now? So Rothbart and Bates really talked about these different aspects of temperament as well. They said effort control, which is like your attention control. Can you focus attention? Can you shift attention? How you inhibit and don't really pay attention to things that aren't super important. They talked about negative affectivity, which is really just frustration and fear and discomfort and things like that. And finally, they talked about extroversion, which is really high activity, low shyness, very outgoing. When we think about temperamental differences, I have this example of a child getting dressed. So, first child, super distracted. They start doing other things, trying to get dressed, but they're playing with their toys and they're messing around with stuff. Snaps and zippers are really complicated. They're having a really hard time sitting still while their parents are helping them button up their shirt. They get really upset when they're told their favorite socks are dirty. It's really hard to calm them back down. Child B, when they're getting dressed, stays focused until they're fully dressed. They stay still while their mom or dad is helping them. They get a little upset when their favorite socks aren't there, but they're quick to soothe. And so just talking about like temperamental differences, that's the same task, but looking how different it is. And then even thinking about how would that condition the parent? If the kid is always fidgety and angry and upset, how might the parent respond versus this very easygoing child? When we measure temperament, the really big way we do it is parent report. And so these are statements and there's questionnaires and there's a child behavior checklist, and really just looking at how does this child's temperament compare to other like peers? And questions, if you are looking here, calms down quickly, will move on from one task to another, rarely gets irritated, things like that. So parent reports are heavily used. They're basically like the survey kind of model. They're easy, they're quick, we can get a lot of data, and parents typically have quite a few interactions with their children in different experiences, and so they're able to respond about their temperament. Like with all self-report though, we see some biases, and parents' own characteristics can affect their interpretations of their child's reactions. So a highly emotional parent interprets that their child's reactions are also very high. And also, parents don't really have a great comparison base. So they're comparing their own child to their own child. They don't say, well, I watched 25 other kids and that are his age, and I think. So we see some bias there. Another way to gather information is by teacher report. And similar to the parent report, just some modifications. Obviously, we're not going to say my child, we're going to say the child, and really looking at it in a different setting. It's important for that because teachers have a much broader sample size. And so they're able to say, wow, I've taught 50 fourth grades and your child acts very typical or not so. Another way is laboratory observation. So we're creating situations in a lab and observing how the child reacts. There was a study you probably remember from intro called The Strange Situations with Ainsworth, and the mother would leave and we'd see how the child would react and we'd figure out what their temperament was based on that. With the lab stuff, it can be costly, it can be time consuming, and it really is just like a snapshot. Anything that happens in a lab, whether it's private assessment or one of these kind of studies, it's not exactly how it'll be in real life. We're controlling way too many variables, and so it's not exactly what we will see in real life. So where does our temperament come from? Obviously, there's a genetic influence, so there's a ton of information that temperament has a biological foundation. We've done twin studies and adoption studies and really see that kids who share the same DNA tend to act similar. We do see that genetic influence declines with age, so environmental influences start to contribute to our differences as we get older. We also see a really strong link from genetics and negative affect, activity, and sociability. And finally, we see a weaker genetic link for positive affect, so things like smiling and laughter. So right now, it's not super clear on how genetics work into influence temperament. There's some different genes like DRD4 and things like that that really we see help us with regulation and attention, but we're not 100% sure why or how it works. So let's talk about our temperament. You are a super easygoing baby. Are you a super easygoing person? What we see is there is quite a bit of consistency. It's pretty consistent across time. Temperament at early ages really predicts temperament at later ages. It doesn't mean it's perfectly stable as changes happen in our brain and our body, but they remain pretty much in the general area. And again, I really want you to think about why does that happen? A baby who is always smiling and just so happy their parents hold them more and there's more positive interactions versus a baby who is screaming and yelling and very colicky, and just thinking about how do those behaviors then affect reactions and actions from parents. So for the next part of this chapter, we're going to talk about child rearing and temperament. Goodness of fit is the topic, as well as the topic of your blog this week. And so what is goodness of fit? So it's the extent to which demands and expectations of the environment fit with our child's characteristics. So it's the appropriateness of the environment depending on the child's temperament. Really, goodness of fit involves acknowledging and understanding your child's temperament and the characteristics that make that up. So we want to work with our child's characteristics rather than against it to socialize them. So I have a couple different examples in here. Here's a very unsociable child. They don't like being around other people. They just would rather be to themselves, and they just don't. The socialization piece is either anxiety producing or frustrating for them. And so a good fit would be understanding that child would be very overwhelmed with a lot of kids at the same time. So maybe you just invite one or two peers over at a time to slowly get them to interact. What would be a poor fit, though, and I've seen this happen, is forcing your child. Oh, come on, we're going to this birthday party. There's going to be 60 other kids there. It's going to be good for you. You need to be with other kids. And so, yes, you want to socialize your child for sure, but we want to make sure we know what is their temperamental makeup and how do we accommodate that. Another example I have here is a very active child. Okay, great fit. It is unrealistic to expect that child to sit still for a long time. Take them to the park beforehand, run around, provide a lot of activities, and keep your child occupied during the event. A poor fit would be expecting that your child can control those behaviors. Be quiet, sit still during this event, and then you punish them because they're moving around. So just really important to know, and this is for students too. I work with a student right now who is very, very active, and it's extremely unrealistic to imagine that he will sit in a class 8 hours a day. So we have built-in motor breaks. We have a sensory diet. We have putting a weighted blanket on their lap. We have things in the hall that they can do activities. We're not going to try and make the student fit into our box of school. We want to do what's best for their temperament. So Last thing I really want you to know, temperament creates a vulnerability to the environment. And our environment can have positive or negative effects on us depending on the temperament. So, really, if you're going into teaching, this is about knowing your kids and knowing their temperament. We have IEPs and individualized education plans for special education students, but really, so many people learn so differently and so uniquely. And so, this is a reminder to just check in with how your students' temperament is. Are they active? Are they social? Do they frustrate easily? And just remembering we have to work with everyone different. I hope you have a great week. I've gotten some thoughts that the music can be distracting, so I'll just have a little clip here and you can look up the song, and that way I can still share music with you. Bye.